Hello lovely. Let's get into gauge in a little bit more detail today. You might have seen the squares that I'm holding on Instagram and YouTube and online and think that that is gauge. So let's talk about that. This is not a crochet swatch. This is just a ruler. It just happens to be a square window. You could have a ruler like this with wee holes in it. I wouldn't use these holes for anything. They're for measuring hooks or needles or something, but you know, the ruler at the end is a ruler at the end. It's a ruler no matter whether it's on a bit of wood or plastic or indeed metal. And again, you could have an L-shaped ruler. You could have all kinds. Just a school ruler, out of your kid's pencil case. It really doesn't matter. What does matter is the measurement. So if I wanted to measure just with a ruler, for example, let me just take this one for ease of seeing. So all I'm going to do is hold the ruler against, I'm going to measure it from 10 centimetres. So I'll put the first line, the start of the ruler measurement at the start of a stitch, and again, don't use the end ones because they're not as reliable because there's nothing pulling on them from this side or this side. So they're not reflective of the rest of the stitches. So I'm going to line it up here with this stitch here, which is the first one there, and I'm going to make sure it's at a right angle, so not like this because that's not going to work. So I'll put it like that, and then I'm simply going to look down, and where it's stopped is here, which is a half stitch. So I'm going to count. I've got for 10 centimetres. This particular swatch is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's not quite 8, it's about 7.5. Now obviously you can't work a half stitch, so what you could do is times it by 2 and make it a 20 centimetre gauge swatch. So all that I would write down here is, and again as well, don't just dump it down when it's all puckered, make sure it's nice and smooth as you can, and it's not pulled in different directions. But you would put it down and then you would measure it. So we'll do it again. I'm going to put the lid on this pen before I mark my yarn with the dreaded Sharpie stain. So there's my 10 centimetres there. So I'll do it again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. So this particular swatch is 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres, and that's 4 inches for those of you who use Imperial, and it was 7.5 rows by, so that's the amount of rows is going down the waist. That's literally how many rows you've worked, how many rows you've got. So I think I said about half centimetres, half stitches, but obviously that's a row instead. And then across the way, you just get your ruler again and you place it across, and you find the edge of a stitch. Again, not the very edge because the edge won't be reliable, but just the edge of an actual stitch, so where one stitch finishes and one begins. And again, we're going to count from 0 up to 10, which means finishes about here. So let's count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now Are we going to 17 or are we counting that as 16? I would probably say it's 16. So that would be 16 stitches. Now, what I would recommend before you finalise and say, yep, definitely 7.5 rows and 16 stitches, I would choose a different row, place it down again and double check. So there's the edge of my stitch. Smooth it out. Don't pull at it though. We don't want it to be pulled, but we don't want it to be all loose either. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and it's 16. So I'm happy to say that that's 16. Now I can show you with the fancy little Instagram ready square. I'll put it down, I'll line up my corner to the end of my stitch. That's the end of my stitch and the end of my row. There we go, or the edge of a row, I should say. Okay, make sure it's nice and straight. Yep, happy with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that matches with what I had said. 1 row, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and is it a half or a wee bit more than a half? I think it's just a little bit more than a half, so I'll go with 7.5, as I think I could push it down a wee touch there. Now, so my gauge swatch is literally 7.5 rows by 16 stitches. Now obviously can't work a half row, so what we'll do is we'll times that by 2 to get a full number. So let's get a calculator. You don't need to do it all by hand either. You could obviously 7.5 times 2, but you can simply just get your calculator. 7.5 times 2, 15. So 15 rows by, and then whatever you do to top you have to do to the bottom. 16 times 2, 32. So that would be my gauge, and I just remember to say that's 20 by 20 centimetres squared. And that's all the swatches. That's all the gauges. So the next video is going to talk about why is this important, why. So I've got the swatch, so what? So I'll talk about that in the next one, and I'll also talk about what kind of stitch I've been using here and why different stitches have to be checked, because not every stitch looks like this one. So how to spot the different stitches within that pattern that you're crocheting. And there's a lot of other things I'm going to talk about as well as using the scales too, and why we're using the scales. So hopefully this has been helpful, and let me know in the comments if you've got any questions or anything else you would like me to cover or follow up with. Okay, bye lovely.